Our next speaker is another remarkable asset in our field, Axel Wirth. Axel will share with you his front row seating access and awareness of the challenges and opportunities in the cybersecurity area of digital healthcare. Axel, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Elliot, and thanks for inviting me, and certainly thank you everybody for joining today. One of the things Tom and Elliot asked me to do is briefly talk about my career and how I actually came from a traditional engineering career to be focused on cybersecurity in healthcare and specifically medical devices. So my background is in electrical engineering, and I spent the first 20-some years of my career working for a medical device manufacturer, both on the diagnostic and monitoring side as well as on the imaging side. Then transitioned into health IT, spent some time with PAC systems as well as the back then evolving EHR systems, and then 12 years ago took an opportunity to help a cybersecurity company to develop their business strategy and their focus on healthcare. And what was interesting is that back in 2009, one of our customers had disaster strike, cyber disaster, that is. And what happened is that a service technician came with a software update for a medication cabinet and inserted a USB thumb drive into the med cabinet and transferred a computer virus not only to that particular cabinet, but it spread across the network and infected more than 100 cabinets actually across the entire organization, actually across multiple locations. So for me personally, that was an interesting moment as that brought together my entire career. But I understood enough of the regulatory background of medical devices, the design restraints under which manufacturers design devices. I understood enough of the IT and networking background, and I understood enough of cybersecurity to realize that this single event 10 years ago really pointed to big trouble in the future. And I think we've all heard stories like that since then. And really through this one event, I started shifting my career towards cybersecurity with focus on medical devices. Next slide, please. So if we look at cybersecurity, it really is not only a technical topic. It is actually a very broad and multidisciplinary topic. And we need to consider the changes going on in healthcare, as Eric was speaking about earlier. Right? We're introducing more and more digital system, and we're digitizing more and more health data. 2 or more zettabytes per year of health data globally and increasing, right? Those are tremendous volumes of data we not only generate, but also need to protect. We are also, and accelerated through COVID-19, developing remote care models, right? We're moving care out of the hospital into the patient's home. We talk about telehealth, telemedicine, remote monitoring, and even remote diagnosis and treatment. And we are certainly living in a time of consumerization of healthcare through everything from personal health trackers to health and lifestyle apps on your smartphone you use to manage your diet, manage your exercise routine. So those are the digital healthcare trends. At the same time, we live in a changing world, right? Aging population, which is going to put a burden on the healthcare system. Evolving technologies, which are both an opportunity and a challenge, right? We're developing more and more capabilities dealing with data across 5G networks, storing data in the cloud, accessing it from everywhere. Huge opportunity, but also increasing our dependency on that infrastructure. Then at the same time, we're living in a world, sorry, can you go back, please? We're living in a world of growing political tension, crises and disasters, everything from climate change over global pandemics, over refugee crisis, that we need to deal with in what I would call a cyber immature critical infrastructure. Really, healthcare has a long way to go to become secure enough to do all these things we are planning. And we need to do that in a world of changing attackers. We see still individual hackers. The 17-year-old high school student who hacked into Twitter a couple of weeks ago. That was your traditional individual hacker. But we're also seeing cyber criminals that operate very stealthy and are motivated financially. We're seeing nation states, cyber activists, cyber terrorists that have a political motivation. And we're seeing hackers for hire that work for anybody that is willing to pay for whatever service they're offering. So the motivation of the underground economy of these hackers and adversaries is very broad. It can be financial, economical, political, and many times it's a combination of those. And consequently, they're also targeting not only information, not only computers and data, but also entire economies and societies and elements within those societies, like healthcare. So as we talk about cybersecurity, we need to realize that we have a digital patient in a fragile world meeting very capable cyber adversaries. Right? And I think we really need to stress the risk that is based in this combination of those three changing areas. Next slide, please. So what does that mean for us as clinical engineers? Clearly, cybersecurity is a new muscle for us we need to develop and learn to use, right? It was not part of our traditional education. So as clinical engineering and health technology management leaders, we need to develop these new capabilities, and we need to be able to lead new teams within our organizations that are capable of understanding the impact of new technology and new care delivery models, and as they are confronted by these new cyber risks. We need to stay vigilant, we need to be informed, and we need to be able to deal with these new evolving threats. We also need to look at the big picture, right? It is never just about the individual device that has a cyber risk. It is always about the entire enterprise, the entire hospital, and it is always about our national health system. So clearly we need to understand it is about critical data and the integrity of critical data. And that can be things like dosages and prescriptions, but also things like calibration data, safety limits in our devices. We need to deal with device availability, right? If a medical device gets attacked, it is not available to deliver the care it was designed for to deliver. And we need to deal with privacy and health data confidentiality. So on the right-hand side, just to get everybody acquainted a little bit with cyber terminology, right? We need to deal with the threats, the external components we have no control over, but we need to be aware of. We need to deal with vulnerabilities, and those are the things we design and configure into our systems. And yes, we have to control over those, and we need to make sure that we minimize the exposed vulnerabilities. And then lastly, we have assets, which is basically anything of value to us. That can be data, money represented in digital format, our reputation, patient safety, lives. And only if you have a combination of those three, you have a threat, you have a vulnerability that can be exploited, and you have an asset you need to protect, then you have a cyber risk, right? So we need to have awareness of what we have control over and what we don't, but need to be aware of. Next slide, please. So we're talking about the secure device lifecycle, and this is now from the healthcare organization perspective, from the hospital perspective. We're talking about procurement, defining your governance, your risk management process, your risk acceptabilities, your roles and responsibility as they pertain to security, budget, staffing, replacement planning. Then the next is procurement, which is then buying the actual device. And while you do that, you need to define your cybersecurity requirements. You need to select your vendors and the devices. You need to perform an initial risk assessment. You need to contractually enforce your cyber requirement. and you need to be able to make sure that the devices you're buying integrate with your target environment. And the reason I'm dividing up here pre-procurement and procurement is that I see pre-procurement more as strategic and laying the foundation, whereas procurement is more tactical. It's a process as I buy the individual devices. And then, of course, I need to deploy it. I may actually conduct some pre-deployment testing on the device, install it, integrate it with my clinical, but also my cybersecurity infrastructure. And I potentially need to train people how to use it. And then, of course, the longest phase is the dark green one, the operational phase. I need to manage my inventory. I need to know what is on my network. I need to continually perform risk assessment because my environment changes, my devices change. I need to maintain my devices, for example, through patching, but also through network configuration, through firewalls and whatnot. Manage changes, monitor cybersecurity events, and respond to them. And then lastly, when the device reaches the end of life, I need to decommission it, which means I need to remove all critical data from the device, which obviously is patient and clinical data, but also things like network and user credentials and research data and intellectual property. I potentially need to re-image the device if it gets repurposed, resold, donated. I need to remove it from my inventory system, and I need to document that I've properly disposed of the device. Next slide, please. So what does it mean for us as leaders in health IT? Right? I need to develop interdisciplinary teams because cybersecurity never affects just our IT teams, our clinical engineering teams. It really affects everybody in my organization. It starts with replacement planning and procurement, where I need to balance the desired new clinical features against the device's cybersecurity features. I need to also find a new balance between the device's life expectancies, which can be 10 years or longer, and its cybersecurity maintainability. Right? Operating systems go end of life many times before the device reaches its clinical end of life. I need to manage the medical device security risk. I need to balance between security of the individual device and security of my network. And I need to realize that my device is a security risk to my network and my network is a security risk to my device. I also need to be prepared for device functional disruption as that impacts care delivery and the business of care. I need to be able to respond to incidents, and I need to balance the patient medical needs against IT security needs. For example, I have a patient on a ventilator. The ventilator is infected by malware that spreads through the network. So what is actually the larger risk? Is it to keep the device running and let it spew malware, or to move the patient to another device, right? That is not purely a technical decision. It is a clinical, technical trade-off decision, clinical risk versus technical risk. I also need to make care delivery decisions when devices get infected, right? What happens if my cath lab, my CT scanner gets shut down? Can I still accept emergency patients coming into my emergency room? And then, of course, I need to manage my vendor relationship. I need to be able to disclose newly discovered vulnerabilities to my vendor partners, and I need to understand what they disclose to me, what they learn about their devices. And I need to be able to reach out to my vendor if I have a security response situation and I may need new resources and new information. Next slide, please. So wrapping up here, right? So we really need to develop our team's cyber knowledge and skills, general cybersecurity, and certainly specific to medical devices, because that is a unique skill within the scope of the big picture. Need to build new relationships around cybersecurity, cross-functional, but also externally. I need to be ready to leave my comfort zone. Cybersecurity is not what I learned in school, in college, right? It is a very different topic. And unfortunately, just because we added that cyber topic to your list of tasks, all the other things don't go away, right? So yes, it is an additional burden you need to deal with, and clearly healthcare from a security perspective is challenged, right? I encourage everybody to download this IBM Ponemon Institute report, which not only shows that security incidents in healthcare are the most expensive, but it also shows that security incidents in healthcare take the longest to be discovered and take the longest to be remediated. So there's a lot of good information in that report. And with that, I'm wrapping up and handing off to Derek.
Axel, thank you so much. It's a great presentation, and thanks for bringing your enormous experience forward to the table. And we can next use the presentation provided by Derek to talk about how does this apply in low and middle income countries. This is 10 years ago, this was described as a first world problem. Today, it is a challenge and a tremendous opportunity around the globe